Visual effects can be pretty daunting at first, but when you actually break it down into smaller steps, the process actually becomes much easier to understand. That's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to take a look at how visual effects are made and show you that even the most complex visual effects shots, like the Hulk eating a sandwich and destroying cars in a fit of rage, are achieved through a series of well-planned and relatively simple steps. In this lesson, I'm going to cover everything from pre-production planning to post-production finishing touches. And by the end, all those behind-the-scenes videos that you love to watch will make a whole lot more sense when you binge them again. When trying to understand how visual effects are made, I find it helps to visualize the process by comparing it to building a house. It might seem a little strange, but when you build a house, you need a plan, you need some drawings from an architect and an engineer. Once you have this, you need different specialized teams to come together to build the foundation, the walls, then add roofing, install the plumbing, all the way through to finishing touches like paint, lighting, and even furnishings. Visual effects is actually quite similar to this. You start with a plan and some drawings, then different specialized teams add their details, and everyone works together to create a final sequence of images that are used in a film. Doesn't matter whether you're building a house or making a visual effects film. If you don't have a good plan and an agreed process of steps to follow, it's going to be an absolute disaster. I mean, you can't start painting a house until you have walls, and your electrician can't add lights if there isn't a ceiling. But this is the same for visual effects. You need an agreed order of steps to help make sure everything comes together in the right order at the right time. And that's why a visual effects pipeline is so important. Every company has their own visual effects pipeline. And to be honest, they're super complicated with all sorts of proprietary tools, processes, and custom tech involved. This is what one looks like, but don't worry, this is probably the last one you'll ever need to see. To help make things easier to understand, I've created my own visual effects pipeline diagram that illustrates all the main tasks and dependencies involved with making a visual effects film. We're going to work our way through each step in this pipeline, starting at the top left, moving all the way through to the bottom right, covering every step along the way as we create a visual effects shot, an alien chasing our actor in an alien landscape. Once a film script and a budget have been approved, one of the first steps in creating a visual effects film is storyboarding. This step involves taking the script and turning it into a comic book, where artists illustrate all the key scenes and sequences of the film. Now, by converting the script into a sequence of images, it helps everyone plan and visualize the film, how it will look, what camera equipment will be needed, and how elaborate any big special effects will need to be. Storyboarding also allows for really quick changes to be made to the story, pace the film, and for identifying potential issues that could be really costly once production has started. Now, around the same time, concept artists start getting to work by bringing that comic book version of the film to life. These incredibly talented artists come up with all the crazy designs for characters, environments, and action sequences that have never been seen before. These concept art drawings really help set the tone, the mood, and the general style of the film. Just like storyboards, it makes sure everyone is on the same page and can agree on what the finished film will look like before any filming starts. Once the director is happy with the storyboards and concept art, previs artists start getting to work. Now, previs artists creates basic 3D scenes based on the film's storyboards and concept art. They create basic animations, the 3D environments, and any 3D props, and start blocking out the film by creating everything in 3D. It allows the director to make decisions about the camera angles. They can visualize the scale and design of any sets they need. They can even review real-world locations that might be needed, and even start planning any complex stunts. Once the previs is approved, production moves to the real world, where film crews, actors, stunt doubles, mocap artists, they all start recording action with a real film camera. Now, depending on the shot, this is often done in the studio environment where directors get to control everything from what time of day it is to what the weather's doing, and even, where rocks should be placed in the background. Now, shots can be filmed on locations such as a desert, a busy city street, or basically any remote location that is needed to help tell the story. When on set, priority is to record as much footage as possible using the film camera. Now, the majority of footage collected is focused around the performance of the actors, but it also includes filming real-world elements like fire, explosions, water, miniatures, background footage, and of course, all those crazy green screen action sequences that you've seen. All this footage is needed before any visual effects can be added. And the better the footage is, the easier it is to integrate the computer graphics with the real footage later in the pipeline. While all this filming and action is happening, visual effects artists collect real-world data, like what camera lenses were used, what lighting conditions they had set up for each shot. They also collect photographic reference and even digital scans of sets, basically as much data as possible, so their teams can recreate everything in the computer and have the best chance possible of matching the real world with the 3D world they'll be creating further down the pipeline. Now, if the film has any digital characters or complex performances, visual effects artists will also need to collect motion capture data. You've probably seen footage of actors with weird dots on their faces and small cameras stuck right in their face, or even suits, the ones that are covered with all the ping pong balls. Now, this process is referred to as motion capture, mocap for short. It uses lasers and computers to track the exact position of each of those markers in 3D space. This movement data can then be applied to digital characters, which helps make their performance much more believable, simply because it's based on real-world interactions and gravity, which can actually be pretty time-consuming and difficult for animators to create manually. We'll talk about animation in a little bit more detail later, but in terms of camera performance, mocap, to this point, the director wraps and the film production teams, they celebrate and basically go home. They've done their job. They've filmed all the action sequences, the actors have performed all their scenes, the stunt doubles have done all their stunts, and the FX pyro teams have finished blowing everything up. That's great for the film production teams, done a great job. This is when the main chunk of work really starts happening and where visual effects artists take the camera footage and start working their magic. Once the visual effects team gets their hands on the footage that was filmed on set, match move artists or motion tracking artists get to work. Now, their main goal is to create a camera in the computer. That camera has to perfectly match the movement of the real world camera. In other words, they match the motion. This is a crucial step in the visual effects pipeline. And if done incorrectly, it can completely ruin a film, as the two worlds won't line up and everything slips around and looks disconnected and basically it looks completely fake. Now, not all visual effects have digital creatures in them, but in our pipeline, we're going to run through the process of how they are created and integrated into the live action footage that's filmed on set. You can see our little character here represented as a blob of digital clay, and this is effectively what a modeler is, a digital sculptor that molds and shapes a blob of digital clay into a realistic character or object. But the job of a modeler doesn't stop there. They're responsible for creating a wide range of 3D models depending on the requirements of the visual effects shot. One moment they could be creating a simple prop, such as a shoe or a weapon. The next they could be building a highly detailed city street with cars, trucks, and vegetation. In addition to characters and props, modelers are needed to build realistic animals and insects, or even super accurate digital double models of actors for use in any dangerous stunts or transitions. To do all this, modelers need a really good understanding of anatomy, movement, and the physical properties of different materials, and basically how things are manufactured in real life. Once a 3D model is ready, the texture artist starts adding layers of color, texture, surface properties, everything that really makes it start looking real. The texture artist essentially decides what each part of the model will look like. For each part, they decide if it should look like metal, plastic, skin, leather, or even wax. Is the model old and rusty? Is it new and shiny? Can you see through parts of it? The list goes on forever. And this is where texture artists are like painters, but they're also so much more. They need to understand how materials respond to color, to light, to scratches, dust, weathering, And I'm not just talking about the top level of detail here. They add this detail down to the microscopic level and are capable of recreating how the real world deals with all these properties in intricate detail. Let's think about our little character for a minute. Is its skin wrinkly or smooth? Does it have dirt under its nails? Does light pass through thin parts of its ears? What patterns do you even see when you look into its eyes? All of these questions are answered by the texture artists as they continually refer to the concept art drawings and any real-world photographic reference to make sure the digital character looks as photorealistic as possible and has the best chance of being seamlessly integrated into the live-action footage that was filmed on set. No matter how good a 3D character model is, or how realistic the textures and shading looks like, it's not going to be very believable if you can't make it move. Just like a real-world puppet needs strings and rods to move it around, riggers essentially do the same thing in the 3D world. Rigging is the process of adding a skeleton or a set of controls to a 3D model, which allows animators to manipulate and move the model in a realistic and believable way. A rigger's job involves creating user-friendly controls that animators can use to bring characters and objects to life. Now, this requires a deep understanding of human and animal anatomy, muscle movements, and every mechanical system probably known to man. For example, in order to create a believable animation of a little alien character, a rigger needs to understand how bones, muscles, and skin will work together and move around. In a similar manner, to rig a spaceship, a rigger needs to understand how the ship will fly, how the wheels will move, and what happens when the plane lands, how the doors will open, and even how all the buttons and levers will move in the cockpit. The people that use the controls created by the riggers and add movement to all the 3D props and characters are the animators. They're the digital puppeteers responsible for bringing the models to life by adding movement and performance to the models. They're often referred to as the digital actors of the visual effects world, as they're responsible for creating the performances of the characters. To do this, they need to really understand the movement and behavior of the character or the prop. They pay close attention to the script and storyboards and interpret the performance of the character to make it believable and realistic. Now, to help make the finished animation more realistic, animators will often use mocap data that was collected on set from the actors with the funny suits and dots all over them. And this data really helps speed up the performance and add a level of realism to animations that can be super complex and pretty time-consuming to create from scratch. FX artists, they create digital simulations. These are like water, rain, hair, cloth, crowds, explosions, and even clouds, right? Basically all the complicated stuff that would be pretty much impossible to create manually in 3D by hand. The technology involved with creating these digital effects has come a long way. And simulations that were previously thought to be impossible are now done with relative simplicity, but it's not without its difficulties, and this part of the pipeline is highly technical. It also requires a fair bit of creative flair. Throw in the need for a crazy amount of computing power and you start to realize how complex it can be to recreate, simulate things like water and fire that happen so naturally in the real world. This is the reason why directors love to film as many real-world elements like these as possible. But there's always going to be times where digital effects artists are needed to provide full control of these elements and allow directors to tell stories and add the visuals that they could never do while on set. We've actually come a long way in our visual effects pipeline, and at this point we've got most of the elements we need, from real footage, the actor's performance, got the realistic 3D character. We've even just got some effects that are adding all that realism and excitement to the scene. But we can't just add these together without making sure they look like they belong together. For our 3D character to look like it's part of the real world that was filmed, we now need to match the lighting conditions. If the director filmed actors on a set at nighttime, and we tried to integrate our digital character into that scene, it looks seriously strange if our 3D character was lit with bright lights, like was standing on a sunny beach. This is where lighting artists come in to play a crucial role. They review the lighting data that was collected on set and work to recreate this in the computer. Now, their goal is to match the lighting conditions perfectly. Just like the match move artists, the ones who created a digital copy of the camera, lighting artists create a copy of the real lights in the computer. Best part is, in the computer world, there are already familiar lights like spotlights, neon lights, tungsten, sunlights, and they're all at the disposal of the lighting artist to recreate the mood of the original scene. As you can imagine, the job of a lighting artist requires a strong technical knowledge and a keen eye for detail and colour, and a deep understanding of how light works, how cameras capture it and create photographs, and how light reacts with surfaces, even how it bounces around a room. When lighting is done correctly, our 3D character will blend seamlessly with the real footage, with believable reflections, highlights, and even shadows that trick the viewer into making them think the character is actually real. There are times when a director can't film in the location they want, or the location they want actually doesn't exist. When this happens, they need the help of environment artists and map painters to create these parts of the world as digital environments. In our case, with our little alien scene, an environment artist is needed to create the planet environment for the digital character and our actor to run around on. At the same time, map painters get to work creating highly detailed digital paintings that help add realism, which might take too long or be too complicated for the environment artist to create in 3D. Traditionally, map painters are used to paint backgrounds. In our case, that would be the alien sky and the distant alien planets, seeing the reference. Now, map painting is used extensively in films, and the general concept actually hasn't changed, and the techniques haven't changed since it was first used back in the day. At this point, we have all the main elements needed for the final visual effects shot. We still have a few really important jobs to do before the shot is finished. Remember when the director was on set filming the actors against a green screen? Well, before the actor can be put into the digital environment and run around with our digital character, we need to cut the actor out, separate them from the green screen set that they performed it. This is where rotoscope artists work their magic and create a mat around the actor, so all you are left with is the actor with no background visible at all. This then allows the actor to be placed into the digital environment without anyone knowing that they were filmed in a different studio environment. Placing this freshly cut out actor into a digital scene requires the keen eye and talents of a compositing artist to bring all the different layers and elements together into the final finished shot. A compositor is responsible for layering everything that we have created into a single shot. They combine it all: the footage from the set, the digital characters, the digital environments, the mats were created by the rotoscoping artists, the X elements like fire and dust, even the 3D lighting and the animation, everything. Then they blend it all together to create the photorealistic final shot. Best way to think of this process is to picture each of these elements printed out on a sheet of glass. We have the live footage from the set on a sheet of glass, the digital character on a sheet of glass, the actor on a sheet of glass, and so on. The compositor takes all of these and sits one on top of the other. Then they blend them all together, and using all sorts of kind of clever little tricks, they make it feel like one single image. As they begin to combine everything together, they make sure to match the colors, they blend shadows, they match the lighting effects, and even control the viewer's focus by blurring elements and adding focus, and putting all of the finishing touches onto the shot to make it look as believable as possible. The final step in our pipeline is to add the finishing touches to the composition to make it look as polished as possible. This step is called grading, and it's similar to how you add filters and adjustments to your own photos before you share them on social media. So grading is the process of adjusting the colors, adjusting the shadows, the saturation, the lighting temperature, basically everything to do with giving that finished look and feel. Grading can be used to create a certain mood or atmosphere to match the video with other footage used in the film, or to simply make the video look more appealing. And once the director is happy with the final grade of the shot and is happy with how it looks when compared to the other real-world footage used in the film, the video is ready to be exported and prepared for distribution. And that's it. That's a wrap. The next time anyone sees the final output will be on a cinema screen or in the comfort of your own home. All that hard work, all those incredibly talented people working together on set and in production studios successfully blurring the line between the real world and the digital world. That is visual effects, and that's how they're made. Before we wrap up here, I want to quickly give recognition to a team that isn't shown in our visual effects pipeline. They actually play a crucial role in bringing everything to life. That's the production team. They oversee the entire process from the initial story and script stages all the way through to the final output and delivery to the studio. They basically manage and coordinate all the creative and technical teams. They schedule every task and ensure that everything is delivered on schedule and within budget. And they really are the unsung heroes of visual effects. Without the support of a production team, visual effects would not be possible. So make sure to remember that next time you watch the credits roll. We've covered a huge amount in this lesson, and I really hope by breaking it down into those smaller individual steps that you now have a much better understanding of how visual effects are made. Hopefully you might even have discovered a role or two that has sparked a bit of interest and even got you keen to learn more about career paths in visual effects. So in the next lessons, I'm going to take you behind the scenes on some of the biggest visual effects movies ever made, and we'll take a deep dive into all the different types of software used by professional artists. And most importantly, what steps you need to take if you're keen to learn how to become a visual effects artist yourself.